The time, the summer of the year 1650, the place, England. The Puritan Revolution was over, the bloody Civil War had ended, King Charles I had been beheaded, and Oliver Cromwell proclaimed protector of the English Commonwealth. Now the people yearned to settle down into some form of normalcy under the new government and the new dominant religion. This church had only recently been changed from an Anglican one into a Puritan one. This had been achieved by Cromwell's troops by smashing all the statuary, all the stained glass windows, by picking up the altar and all the popish trappings and throwing them out into the street. So now the church was ready for, well, some form of consecration. The body of the church was crammed full of officers and soldiers of the colonel's regiment, for, boy, if your colonel gives a sermon, you'd better be there. In parade uniform, spick and span, looking religious under the roving eye of your sergeant major. So there they sat, row upon row in red and white, staring stolidly ahead, and woe betide the private who dared to nod off. The lesson that morning was read by old Judge Gervase Bennett, who was a personal friend of Colonel Barton's and also a member of Parliament. Most of them must have fought a losing battle with sleep when, thank God, suddenly in the back of the church, a man jumped to his feet, a vagabond who cried, "Come, friend! Christ says this, Paul says that, but what canst thou say?" The man's feet must have left the ground. At least a dozen soldiers must have thrown themselves upon him, swept him off his feet, and carried him out of the church, where they threw him down the steps. For a religious fanatic to interrupt the church service was not exceptional in those heady days of newfound religious freedom. Small Protestant sects were swarming all over England. New ones were springing up every day with names like the Sabbatarians, the Anti-Sabbatarians, the Muggletonians, the Seekers, the Ranters. They usually were the personal congregations of one charismatic evangelist or preacher, and all of them interrupted church services. But to have interrupted this particular service, well, to do that you must have been a real nut who had lost all contact with reality. The name of the young man who was now being dragged off to prison was George Fox. He was 26 years old, a shepherd from the fens of Leicestershire, and there among his sheep he had received a revelation. He had heard a voice telling him that if God had ever spoken to the individual, direct, as he did in the Old Testament, then he was still doing so today to anyone who was prepared to listen to the still small voice in his own heart. God did not speak to congregations. He spoke to people. And anyone who imposed himself between that individual and his God, calling himself an intermediary, had to be removed. So, no more priests, no more parsons, no more churches, no more set prayers, liturgy, hymns, creeds intoned in unison. No. George Fox had preached his revolutionary gospel of love for a number of months, when here in the church in Derby that Sunday morning his luck ran out. For when his case came to trial in the old town hall in Derby, there were two judges. One was Gervase Bennett, who had read the lesson that morning, and the other was Colonel Barton himself. Judge Gervase Bennett presided.